Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to discuss what the red tip stop is used on the HPC Blitz machine. With the machine you'll get a black tip stop, you'll get a red tip stop, some control keys showing that they've cut material, likely, the fact demonstrating that the machine is calibrated. Black tip stop is used for small format. You will insert this tuning fork type of looking device, and depending on exactly where you place it, you'll be stopping or gauging the zero position, I suppose, of the x-axis for a small format. But this client's question is, what's the red tip stop for? And of course, the easiest way to begin figuring out what that red tip stop for is to take a dive into the installation instructions. Although there are times when the installation instructions themselves, on their own, just reading them, don't really get you all the way there. Sometimes it's handy to have the machine, it's handy to have a key blank, it's handy to have someone discussing it with you. So let's do that now. Okay, the red tip stop has 3 positions in it. Position or detent 1, 2, and 3. Position 1 is simply where the tool is inserted, the tip stop is inserted into the key machine. That is generally just where it resides. I personally don't cut with the tip stop in the machine, and I only leave it there in case I need to use it. But they're showing in the manual that it's just simply inserted into what is called detent 1, or position 1 right here. There are 3 detents, 1, 2, and 3. Position 1 simply keeps it out of the way of inserting keys into the key jaw set, is what it is. So it doesn't play much of a role other than just staying in position. It needs to have a 1 position, or the first detent, so that the tool is inserted and not encroaching into the space of the jaw, which would be in here, right down in the end of the jaw set. Okay, so according to the installation instructions, what ends up happening is when you are cutting a particular Kaba Peaks key, you're going to insert this into position 2, detent 2, and what happens at that point is the tip stop ends up beginning to encroach into the space ever so slightly. If I push it all the way out, you can see it. If I push it or pull it, it'll stop at detent 3. One more is detent 2, and then detent 1. Detent 1 is out of the way. Detent 2 is for certain Kaba blanks, and detent 3 is when you're going to be cutting something like a Ford ignition key. And it has everything to do with where the key is making contact. Okay, so in detent 3, if this were to be a Ford ignition key, it would be gauging right at the very tip of the key. But when I pull it back to detent 2, you can't see it very well, but it's still projecting into the opening. This is what's required for certain Kaba blanks, that detent position 2. And these types of keys are gauged not on the shoulder, as you would have in a more common, typical application, I suppose, where you insert the key into the jaw set and you flip up your shoulder stop. So this tool comes with 3 different means by which to gauge a key, either the red tip gauge, the black tip gauge, again, small format, and the manual calls that out, or the shoulder gauge for keys that have a shoulder. Whereas if you imagine a Ford ignition key, it does not have a shoulder, or a small format type of key. There's no shoulder stop there, like there would be on this Kaba Schlag blank. Let's switch to the screen view, and let's take a closer look at the installation instructions. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, now let's go about finding our manual. So within our site, you can type in HPC Blitz, and you will locate items that match that criteria. Any of the machines will have the manual. It's right here. So we can do a find function on our keyboard for red. Let's try red tip. Yeah, red tip gauge. So we'll find it a number of times here, shown early in the beginning of the catalog. We're then going to get to a section that discusses at length the use of the red tip gauge. I think it's section 3, actually. Yeah, okay, let's try section 3. I believe that's what it is. 3.1, standard cylinder key with shoulder gauging using jaw A. The jaw plate, the top jaw plate here, it has the letter A engraved on one side and the letter B engraved on the other. Let's be mindful to be sure the proper letter is pointed up, depending on what you're cutting. Well, we're not doing shoulder gauging, so let's keep scrolling. Okay, so they show the red tip gauge inserted as they're talking about standard shoulder gauging for something typical like the Schlage that we just demonstrated. What they're saying is that it's to be pulled in position 1. Position 1 completely removes it. So I think what's happening is if you have the red tip gauge installed, be sure to pull it into position 1. Otherwise, don't have it inserted in the machine at all. It's not used because you're shoulder gauging. So when is it used? Well, section 3.2 talks about standard cylinder key with shoulder gauging again. Jaw B. It'd be for a different type of key blank. You'd flip that jaw over. Again, position 1 is what they're showing. I would have been probably inclined to simply state that the red tip gauge is not to be used. Section 3.3. Here we go. Red full tip stop. Gauge using jaw A. The example would be a Ford, a C24 card. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Key is gauged from tip. From tip. Not from the shoulder. What position do you have it in for the Ford Ignition C24 card? Well, it tells you in position 3. That will fully have it extended, inserting into the area, and that key will make contact, the very tip of the key will make contact with the red tip gauge when it's in position or detent 3. Well, there's still detent 2. Detent 2, or position 2, here, is used and discussed. It's discussed in section 3.4 for this Kaba Peaks. CPKS1 is the card. Key is gauged from bottom stop, not tip. So that would be more akin to small format, in the sense that you are gauging it against that small little shoulder that's there. Except that the Kaba Peaks needs to be gauged differently than typical small format. And that's when you use the red tip stop. You're only going to use the red tip stop when you're cutting something like a Ford Ignition key or something like a Kaba Peaks key. If you're not doing those specific keys or something equal to it, you would leave that tip gauge, that red tip gauge, in your out of the machine, would be my opinion. Section 3.5 goes on to talk about the black tip stop. Again, small format. Let's take a look at those two code cards that they referenced, which would be the CPKS1 and the C24. Let's do that now. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Alright, let's take a look at the C24 code card here. C24, Ford, 5-pin, double-sided. Note, use tip gauge, red tip stop, figure 3. There's figure 3. And it should be in position 3, or detent 3 as well. So this code card calls out the special instructions in terms of how you're supposed to gauge the key. Anything important note-wise will be in this area here of every code card. Every code card from HPC is basically the same. Gives you the information, gives you the code card number, and that's, if you had to, let's say, purchase this code card, you would order an HPC C24 is what you would order. Let's see if we can get that camera to focus. There we go. C24. Depth and spacing data will always be in this area. It will be shown graphically here. Again, notes. Depth and space increments are here if you were to be using a calculator. Obviously, your arcs for your spacing and depth needles on your machine. And then, of course, anything important. So that's the C24. The CPK S1 for Kaba using detent position 2. Kaba peaks. So it's a small format system. It's an A2 system, but they've got, you need to be gauging it differently. Again, the notes area are important. Be sure to use red tip stop, figure 1. Figure 1. They're not telling us it's in position detent 2, but that's where you would want that. Plain language of what the card is, depth and spacing data shown graphically. Oh, also, tells you what cutter to use, CW90MC, that's very important. The C24 code shows us a CW-14MC. Really important that you've got the right cutter installed in the machine prior to cutting. Okay, depth and spacing, arcs for your needles. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So that's the wrap-up of the red tip stop. If you have any questions on when to use this, or any other question about that HPC Blitz machine, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.